Remember that?
I'll take over. The only thing is you gotta go sit down. Are we done yet?
Yeah, I noticed on Mr. Elizondo, as I'm looking through your program review, I know you're not finished, but there's a lot of contracted services. And so talk to me a little bit about contracted services. And one that really caught my attention was the tax office at $500,000. And again, I don't think you're even there yet, but there's contracted services throughout your report.
Okay, so do you want me to skip to the tax office and tell you what that is?
No,
or-
no, you can, well, you can, I guess, since it's related to the contract services.
Okay,
The question is only specific to contracted services, and it's actually on every one of them. Come on, guys. All right, then I tell you what, then. Answer the contracted services on the ones you've covered already then. And then I'll ask you again at tax. So you have like, on page 31, you have 187,000 in contracted services for payroll.
sure. There are, that's for the accounting, payroll, and accounts payable department. So the largest portion of that is for our finance system. So it's like almost $75,000 of that is for our finance system. And then there's a $60,000 amount that's for our banking services. So whenever we, and that amount of $60,000 for our banking services, we budget that money, those funds. But if we keep, I think you all remember this from past years, if we keep a certain amount of money at the bank, then they don't necessarily, they're not hard charges, so we don't have to pay that money. So although I budget this just in case we have to pay for it, 60,000 of those funds will not be used because we maintain sufficient balances at the bank to offset the fees. And those are the two major components. If you take the 75 plus the 60, you're almost there at the 187 for that particular area. There's some other smaller things that we do as well in there, but those are the big ones.
75 and 60 to 135.
Yeah. So there's other things that we have things that we do like for copier repair or the printers.
It sounds like then it's not contracted services like contracted employees.
Oh, no,
This is
no, we don't.
equipment and
Absolutely.
everything. Okay.
We don't contract employees for anything.
Well, that I appreciate the clarification. Thank
Sure,
you.
no problem. Okay. Anybody else before I move on to accounts payable? Good? Okay. I'm on page number 35. Accounts payable, again, this is the area that pays the vendors for all the services and goods that we purchase. I really just want to talk about one thing that they're going to do for next year here. Right now, our focus really is on the payroll department. So for them, we have schools that do budget transfers all the time when they need them. And so we're trying to automate that process because they send all that to us via paper. And we've been working on that since last year, but our system that we have in place doesn't really have a lot of workflows or a lot of approval levels. And so we're trying to ensure that whatever we put in place works and allows enough people to look at it so we feel comfortable actually doing that budget transfer they're requesting. So that's kind of one of the things that they're going to be working on for this next school year to see if we can finish that project up and implement that. Any questions on that? Because I'm going to go to the next section. Okay. The next section is the purchasing, mail services, and warehouse. Again, there's budget numbers there for that particular department. And under, Mr. Macias, if you said you wanted me to continue on with the contract services, there really isn't very much there. It's like $16,000 for the purchasing department and $14,000 for the mail service, and then another $4,300 in the warehouse. Again, none of that is for individuals. It's just different services that we contract for. Again, the highlights here, there's a lot of statistical information on the purchasing department and how many purchase orders they issue and things like that. What they're trying to do for this next year, one of them is a continuation, but one of them is trying to do an e-bidding process where we can have vendors submit their bids to us electronically. There are some interesting challenges with that. So he's looking at it, but it may be a while before we get to do that because we want to make sure that we give the ability, that we don't prohibit any vendor that may be not able to do e-bidding to send us a proposal. So we're looking at that, but we'll see how that works. And it may be where we do both. We still receive paper, but we can receive it electronically as well. We're going to continue to work on that. The last bullet on that page 39 just has to do with our inventory at our warehouse. There was some requests from that department or that area to hire some additional staff, actually 2 years ago. And so in looking at that, we didn't really feel comfortable in asking for more staff for that department, for that function. So what we went back to do instead was to look at the items that we carry at the warehouse. And because now vendors like the office supply store, Staples and Office Depots and all those, they deliver directly to your campuses, and they deliver very quickly within a day or two. So we started looking at the items where there wasn't really a lot of bang for the effort, and that was like pencils and paper clips and things like that, where we felt like, it doesn't really make sense to carry all these items in the warehouse because we're devoting a lot of our manpower to them, where we can get them just as cheap from the other places and they deliver them directly to our schools. And so we've been eliminating some of the items that we used to carry in the warehouse. And by doing that, we have freed up a lot of more time for our staff so they can focus on making the deliveries that they really need to focus on, and where we don't need additional staff anymore to operate that function. So that saved, because we said, well, one person, and we said, no, it needs to be a team of two, and we said, no, that's too much money, let's look at something different. So that's it for that area. Does anybody have any questions in that area? Okay.
Just on the, when you said you had 72 vendors, on the vendor list we talked about in the past, we still send out something saying, hey, you want to apply to another vendor list?
Absolutely. We have our own bids that we do every year for, well, not every year, whenever the time cycle comes up, for instructional materials and things like that. A lot of them are open bids that we'll even have them over several months, where we may have a company propose this month, but then we still leave it open for next month in case we want more to add. We're always trying to look to increase the number of vendors to make sure we get the best value that we can. And then we also are on a lot of different other lists, like Region 20 that we use theirs, and we have an agreement with Northeast ISD and with by board. I mean, there's a lot of other ones that we use as well. So we're trying to always make sure that we have sufficient vendors to make sure that we get the best, that we're able to get some competition and get the best price for whatever it is we're trying to buy.
Just want to ensure that we give all of our local Judson taxpayers opportunity to be on our vendor list, and they are paying us back.
Definitely, they definitely have an opportunity. Now, does that guarantee that they're going to be on our list? No, but they will always have an opportunity, most definitely. Yep. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the next area, and it is our. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Brown. Yes, sir.
I have a question. So you're saying that, is there a specific time frame that you accept vendors, or say like tomorrow, I have a company, and I contact you and I say I want to go through the process to become a vendor for Jackson. Do I have to wait, do y'all do it every 3 years, or do I just, do you qualify me then, or?
Sure. Let me kind of tell you the process. We have an electronic vendor registration program. So what happens is when you call us and say, hey, I'd like to be able to receive your bids when we send them out, our RFPs or what have you, then we'll ask you to go into that system and put all your company information in there. And one of the things that's also required is what services or goods do you sell? Are they, materials or what have you? So that we know that when we're going to send out a bid, we're going to send it to anybody who does that particular kind of good or service. So we're not going to send you all bids, just the things that are pertinent to your company. How often we do that depends on the different types of bids. So we may have a bid right now. Let's say that you're selling instructional materials. Well, we may have a bid. The instructional material bid may be coming up in the next 3 months. And so at that time, we will send it to you and say, okay, it's open now, and you can go ahead and bid. But then you may only sell office equipment. So maybe our office equipment one doesn't come up for a year and a half. So you may have to wait a year and a half before we actually send that bid out. It just depends on the timing of what particular commodity you're selling or service as to when the bid goes out, and then we will definitely notify you at the next opportunity for you to bid for the school district. But if somebody comes in and says, hey, I just opened a business down the street and I sell instructional materials, I'd like to sell to y'all, well, then we won't do that. We'll say, I'm sorry, you have to wait for the next opportunity to bid on our services, on that particular bid, to be able to become a vendor. Now, on occasion, if there's a unique item that you sell that we don't have a bid for, then we'll take that and say, okay, well, if we need that, we'll make sure we send people over there to get pricing from you for those particular goods or services that you're selling. But those are far and few in between. Typically, it's going to be through our bid process.
No, I was just inquiring about there's no time limit actually to become a vendor, not actually bidding. And I realize that when the bid goes out, it may be 3 years for you bid on that you have something that he actually has. But in order to become a qualified vendor,
You mean be on the list?
right? There's no time frame.
Be on the list to receive notifications?
Right.
No, you can do that anytime you want.
Okay.
It's electronic. You can even do it when we're closed. You can just go out there and register. And the next one is our tax office. Again, the page that shows the contracted services, that $500,000 that's sitting there, this is the amount that we pay the Bexar County Appraisal District for doing appraisals for all the properties in our school district. So it doesn't matter who you are, anybody who is a taxing entity in Bexar County has to pay a proportionate amount of the budget for the appraisal district, so what it ends up being, and they divvy it out based on the value of your district as to how much you have to pay for those towards that budget. Ours happens to be $512,000. Really the thing that we're looking at for the tax office, and really more than just the tax office, more of our departments for next year, is for them to revamp their website for the tax office. We want to make it a little bit user-friendly and a little bit more information for our taxpayers. And that's one of the big initiatives that they're going to have for next year. There really is nothing else that they're really looking at, unless the board or Dr. Montoya suggests something else.
So which customer service tax office?
Thank you.
Elderly, and they do not want us to combine with their county. They want us to keep our own tax office.
Okay. Whatever you tell us, we will do. Thank you very much. That's fine. And you're right. I mean, I always get compliments on the service that they provide to the folks in our district. Once in a while I get a complaint, but mostly they're compliments. And the last area that I'm going to cover tonight is our employee services and risk management function. And I'm sorry that I don't have a budget sheet for this particular one, but as y'all know, it wasn't really a separate department under our area until January. So we really didn't take the time, to be very honest with you, to try to discern how much money was allocated to that particular function. We have already created a new department for them. So for next year, we'll be able to tell you exactly how much is being budgeted for that department. And actually, when we go through the budget process, you will see their request for next school year for that particular department as well. And here, there's a lot of opportunities that we're trying to look at. Most of them really involved our health insurance. We want to make sure we have a district health insurance committee. And it's really an insurance committee, not just health insurance. And so we want to make sure, in the past, we weren't really using them or involving them a lot in the process. And we want to make sure that we increase that participation and involvement from their part. We've had one meeting with them so far this year since January, and it's been I think it was a very positive meeting. And we're having another one planned, I think in the next, I think it's in May when we're going to meet with them again, to try to involve them in not only health insurance, but more of the other benefits that we offer our employees as well. And I think, like I said, we've received some really good feedback, so I hope that we can make that committee work for us and help us a little bit more into the future. We have been learning more about the Affordable Care Act, and it's scaring us more and more as we learn more and more about it. It's a very complicated act, a lot of requirements. Some of them may cost the district a lot of money. We'll have to kind of, as we continue on, there's some phases that went in 2015, some a lot more in 2016. Just the reporting alone is very onerous, and we're looking right now at actually it's a firm that helps with the reporting, and so we're kind of getting some pricing as to how that's going to work, because we don't feel like we really have a great understanding of some of those requirements. And so at least for the first year or 2 years, we're thinking about contracting that out to somebody who really understands it, to make sure that we don't have any exposure, or we limit the exposure for the school district. They're telling us that if we hire them, that they're going to take on all the liability. We'll read the contract to see what the fine print says, but that'd be great if that was true. But of course, they're going to say, we have to give them the right information for them to report as well. So we're going to be evaluating that, and I'm sure you all will be hearing more about that as we bring requests to y'all about funding for that. It's included it will be included in the budget for next year, but that is a very big monster that again you will be hearing more and more about, because it is a lot of work to comply with their requirements. The other thing, there was a separate on page 42. There's a description from our employee wellness coordinator of the things that have been done this year thus far. But we are trying to enhance the wellness program that we offer for the employees in our school district. The individual that Blue Cross Blue Shield has provided, I think, is doing a great job in the school district trying to help with that. And there's some even larger initiatives that we can look at. Being that we have a new individual in the department, I'm not sure if we can do them for this next year, but I know that y'all have talked about some of those, and things like the smoking and what things we can require of our employees to kind of give them a break on some premiums if they do certain things. And there are some costs involved with that. So we're reviewing some of those programs, and at some point we'll make a presentation to Dr. Montoya and see what he thinks, and if he thinks it's appropriate, then we'll bring it to the board for y'all's consideration. The last option or another bullet that I want to cover has to do with training employees to ensure that we decrease workers' comp claims. That's another thing that I've asked the new director of that department to please look at, so we can ensure that our employees, one, don't get hurt, period, because we don't want anybody getting hurt, and two, to make sure that we try to minimize any workers' comp claims on our program. We are self-insured. As y'all, I think, have heard in the past, we have a very successful workers' comp program. We have a nice, it's about a $5 to $6 million reserve in that program, and so it's been managed well. But there's still opportunity for improvement. As long as we keep getting employees that are being injured, then we can go out there and continue to try to minimize those. And of course, our focus is to try to get a better health insurance benefit package for our employees. We don't have a lot of control over that. It's up to the insurance companies, but we can definitely try by trying to educate our employees as to become a little bit healthier, to try to minimize some of the claims. But we're definitely going to try. Right now, the director has been looking at the different insurance packages, health insurance packages that are offered by the school districts, what the district's contributing, and what all is really in those packages, so that we can really evaluate how we're doing with the package, whether it's a perception that we don't have a very good package or whether it's a reality. And so we can address that with our health insurance broker, agent, so that we can tell them what we're seeing and help them, let them, just make sure that they understand that we know what we're talking about, we know what we're looking at, and that we are looking very hard at getting better benefits for our employees, and make sure that they are working hard for us to make sure that's happening.
Real quick, just back on that insurance part, I mean, there's a new niche in the marketplace now. Just because you have, doesn't mean you have access. I'll give you a real good example. Right up there on Kitty Hawk and Tupperwine, First Choice, one of the largest freestanding ER corporations going in. Everybody said, we're not taking Blue Cross Blue Shield, we're not taking this, we're not taking that. So when they look at that insurance, they've really got to look at who takes what, because I can tell you it's narrowing. And I can tell you because our numbers are up with people that go to places and say, well, I got insurance, but they don't take it. Do you take this? And you know what we say? No, we don't take it either. So it's insurance doesn't mean access. So really got to look at, who, there's Methodist, there's Baptist, there's, Christus Santa Rosa. I carry the Methodist system every December. They say we're dropping Blue Cross Blue Shield. They renegotiate and they take it. I mean, that's every December thing. But a lot like Texas Medical Clinic, place like this, they're really narrowing down what they're taking. So just piece of advice is really, just because you got it doesn't mean anybody's going to take it.
Sure. No, we always look at the network providers that they have. And you're right. I mean, we just received a notification not too long ago, within the past month or two, that they were having problems with Christus Santa Rosa, and we were afraid that they were going to not have them anymore. But luckily they were able to renegotiate, and they continued on. But you're right. I mean, that is critical. Yep.
Mr. Dare.
Glad to hear your report on your new department. Are we going to audit any of those areas where we've had problems in the past, i.e. the family medical temporary disability leave, or the I-9s, or not like you don't have work already to do, but we've had some problems with those areas, so we brought in highly qualified staff. You've revamped, so as part of this next year, are you planning on auditing and training that department on the legal requirements and ensuring that we're in compliance with the law?
Yes, ma'am. Actually, May the, what's the date? 15th, when they're coming. May the 15th. There's already a all-day training that's going to be an in-house training. It's actually going to be provided by the attorneys, because they're the ones who are going to defend us if we have any issues. And so we wanted them to come in and tell us what their expectations are, so we can match those with what our practices are, and ensure that we understand what we're supposed to be doing, just to make sure that, as the old saying goes, that we don't know what we don't know, and then we want to see if we can make sure that we understand what we don't know, if there's anything to try to do better. So hopefully, I mean, we're going to try to do our best to try to get everybody up to speed, and then once we know that, then we'll know if we have other issues, and we can definitely look at having somebody else from the outside coming and making some reviews. Sure.
Thank you, gentlemen, appreciate it. We're going to go into closed session now. This board will now adjourn to closed session pursuant Texas Government Code 551.074, discussing personnel, and pursuant 551.074, consider and discuss possible resignation agreement with a campus administrator. No final action or decision or vote shall be taken while this board is in closed session. This board will reconvene after closed session. Let's go 8:56. Let's do this. Back at 9:14, no decision or vote was made while in closed session. We're going to vote on 3A, consider and take possible action regarding approval of contract renewal. We're doing contract renewals right now. We're not doing that one yet. 3A, consider and take possible action regarding approval of contract renewals, list of teachers and campus administrators for the 2015-2016 year. I have a motion, Mr. Flores.
Motion.
Second, Mr. LaFoille. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Mr. Dare, do I have a motion?
I move that the board approve the resignation agreement. What's this thing name?
Yes.
With Robert Rabinovich as discussed in closed meeting.
Yeah, you have to say that. You have to say that. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? No? Any alibis, anything else? This meeting is adjourned at 9:15.